ዮቹ አመታት ጀምሮ አይሉ ሀገሪቱ ሊያስታምሙት በማይቻል የርስ በርስ ግጭት ውስጥ ገባች። ሀያላንን በሚሉ አንዳንድ ምዕራባውያን ሀገራት ድብቅ ሴራ ለዚህ ስቃይ የተዳረገችው ሀገር በኑሮ ውድነት፣ ስደት፣ ረሃብና ጦርነት መዝገብ ውስጥ ስሟ ሲሰፍርም ምዕራባውያኑ በተባበሩት መንግስታት ድርጅት አማካኝነት ተደጋጋሚ ማዕቀቦችን ለመጣልና የጭካኔ በትራቸውን ለማሳረፍ ምንም አልተጨነቁም። በ1990ዎቹ ዓመታት ሀገሪቱ ከአንገቷ ቀና ማለት አቃታት። ዜጎቿንም ዓለም ዘነጋቸው። ሁሉም ነገር እንዳልነበር ሆነ። ዩጎስላቪያ ታላቋ ዩጎስላቪያ ተብላ እንዳልተጠራች ሁሉ ወደ 6 ትንንሽ ሀገርነት ተለወጠችና ኃይሏና ስሟ መክኖ መቄዶኒያ፣ ሞንቴኔግሮ፣ ክሮሺያ፣ ስሎቫኒያ፣ ቦስኒያ፣ ሄርዞጎቪና እንዲሁም ሰርቢያ የሚል የምዕራባውያን ፖለቲካ ቀዶ ጥገና ተከናወነባት። አይሆኑ ሆነው ከታዩትና ሀያልነን ከሚሉ አንዳንድ ምዕራባውያን እጅ ላይ ለመውደቅ ከበቁት ሀገራት ውስጥ አንዷ ሶሪያ ነች። በተለይም የአባታቸውን እግር ተክተው ወደ ስልጣን ከመጡት ከበሽር አልአሳድ አገዛዝ ጀምሮ ሶሪያ እንደ ቢቢሲና ሲኤንኤን ባሉት የምዕራባውያን መገናኛ ብዙሃን ትኩረት ማዕከል ሆና ቆይታለች። 2002 ላይ ሶሪያ በምትከተለው ፖለቲካ ሰበብ አሜሪካ እኔ ያልኩት ካልሆነ ባይነት ሶሪያ ላይ ማዕቀብ መጣል ጀመረች። ከዚህ ጊዜ አንስቶ ሶሪያ የማዕቀብ ማዕት ይወርድባት ጀመር። የአውሮፓ ህብረትና አሜሪካ በሶሪያ ውስጥ ጉዳይ ጣልቃ መግባታቸው አይሉም ሀገሪቱ በ2011 እንደ አውሮፓውያን አቆጣጠር ወደ እርስ በርስ ጦርነት አምርታ ይውድመት ማዕከል ሆነች። ኢትዮጵያን ጨምሮ በሚሊዮን የሚቆጠሩ ዜጎቿ ወደ ልዩ ልዩ ሀገሮች ተሰደዱ። ሀገሪቱ የቀድሞ መልኳ ጠፍቶ የፍርስራሽ ህንጻዎች ክምር ሆነች። ሽብር የተራቡ ጦርነት ናፋቂዎች ምኞታቸው ቀንቷቸው በባሩድ ሽታ ታጅበው የክፋት ማዕዳቸውን አጣጣሙ። ጦርነቱ ከ110 ሺህ በላይ ሰላማዊ ህዝቦችን ፈጀ። ከ12 ሚሊዮን በላይ ሶሪያውያን እንዲሰደዱ አስገደደ። ብዙዎቹ ከመኖሪያቸው እንደወጡ የደረሱበት ሳይታወቅ በዚያው ቀሩ። ይባስ ብሎም ዩናይትድ ስቴትስ፣ ብሪታንያና ፈረንሳይ ወትሮም ፕሬዝዳንት በሽር አልአሳድን ከስልጣን እንዲወገዱ ምኞታቸው ነውና የኬሚካል ጦር መሳሪያ በመጠቀም ዜጎችን ጨፍጭፈዋል በሚል ተወነጀሉ።
Men, women, children lying in rows killed by poison gas. It is in the national security interests of the United States to respond to the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons through a targeted military strike.
አሜሪካ በሶሪያ መንግስት ላይ ያቀረበችው ፍርደ ገምድል ፍርድ ግን ከራሷ ከሶሪያና ከሩሲያ በስተቀር አንድም ሀገር አግባብ አይደለም ያላል ነበረም።
Russia proposed on Monday that Syria surrender control over its chemical weapons to the international community for its eventual dismantling to avoid a US military strike.
በሶሪያ የእርስ በርስ ጦርነት ሳቢያ በቢሊዮን የሚገመት ሀብት ወድሟል። ጦርነቱ አሸናፊም ተሸናፊም የለውም። የመንግስታቱ ድርጅት ሀያላንን ለሚሉት ምዕራባውያን የኒዮኮሎኒያሊዝም ምቹ ሁኔታን ከማመቻቸት ውጪ ዛሬም ድረስ ለሶሪያውያን ዘላቂነት ያለው መፍትሄ መሬት ላይ ማምጣት አልተቻለም። ጊዜው እንደ ኤሮፓያን አቆጣጠር ኦክቶበር 7 2001 ነው። ከሴፕቴምበር 11 የአሜሪካ የሽብር ጥቃት ጋር ተያይዞ አሜሪካ ከምን ጊዜም ማጋሯ ብሪታንያ ጋር በመሆን ከሽብር ጥቃቱ ጋር ግንኙነት አላቸው በሚል ኦሳማ ቢንላደንና ሌሎች የአልቃይዳ ሰዎችን ይደግፋሉ ያለችውን ታሊባንን ከስልጣን ለማውረድ አፍጋኒስታንን ወረረች።
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against Al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan.
በዚያው ዓመት ዲሴምበር ወር የአሜሪካ ወረራን ተከትሎ በዩናይትድ ስቴትስ፣ ብሪታንያ፣ ካናዳ፣ አውስትራሊያ፣ ጀርመንና ፈረንሳይን ያካተተ የኔቶ ሀገራት ጥምረት ዘላቂ ነጻነት ለአፍጋኒስታን በሚል ብልጭልጭ የፖለቲካ መጠቅለያ የታሊባን አገዛዝን በመጣል በተባበሩት መንግስታት ስፖንሰር አድራጊነት ጀርመን ላይ በተደረገ ውሳኔ ሁሉን ፈጣሪ አድራጊ እኔ ብቻ ነኝ ባየው አሜሪካ ሐሚድ ካርዛይንን ወደ ስልጣን አመጣች።
We destroyed the Taliban, many terrorists, and the camps where they trained. We continue to help the Afghan people lay roads, restore hospitals, and educate all of their children.
ከዚህን ጊዜ አንስቶ የቶራቦራ ተራራዎች የታሊባኖችና የአልቃይዳ መደበቂያ ሆኑና በ2006 ታሊባን አቅሙን አጠናክሮ ተነሳ። ግጭቶቹም ቀጠሉ። አፍጋኒስታን ለ20 ዓመታት በቀጠለ ግጭት፣ ሽብርና ጦርነት ውስጥ ታመሰች። መላው አፍጋኒስታን ለ20 ዓመታት በቆየው ጦርነት ጥልቅ ስቃዮች ውስጥ ቆይተዋል። ቀስ በቀስ አሜሪካና አጋሮቿ ከ20 ዓመታት በኋላ አፍጋኒስታንን ለቀው በመውጣታቸው ታሊባን እንደገና ስልጣን ያዘ።
The United States will begin our final withdrawal on May 1 of this year.
ምዕራባውያኑ አሸባሪ ባሉት ታሊባን የተራዘመ የሽምቅ ዘመቻ ያሰቡትን ሙሉ በሙሉ ባይሳካም ለ20 ዓመታት ግን አፍጋኒስታን ላይ ያሻቸውን ለማድረግ ጥረዋል።
Get bitch! Oh yeah, baby!
I fucking love you. Do it right, check?
በዚህ ጦርነት ውስጥ አፍጋኒስታን ብዙ ዜጎቿ ላይመለሱ አሸልበዋል። መሰረተ ልማቶቿ፣ ቅርሶቿ ወድመዋል። ከዚህ ሁሉ በላይ ግን አሁን ምዕራባውያን ሲያሻቸው ጥሏት በመሄዳቸው ዜጎቿ በረሃብና በሕክምና ጦት ዋጋ እየከፈሉ መሆኑ ክፉኛ ህመም ፈጣሪ ነው። ከተባበሩት መንግስታት በተገኘ መረጃ መሰረት ከ2005 እስከ 2019 ድረስ ከ26000 በላይ ህፃናት በጦርነቱ ምክንያት ተገድለዋል። አፍጋኒስታን በዓለም ለህፃናት በእጅጉ አደገኛ ናቸው ተብለው ከተፈረጁ 11 ሀገራት መካከል አንዷ ናት። ከ2017 እስከ 2019 ባሉት አመታት ብቻ ከ3000 በላይ ትምህርት ቤቶች ላይ ጥቃት ተፈጽሟል። ባለፉት 20 ዓመታት በአፍጋኒስታን ምንም እንኳን ተደጋጋሚ የሰላም ስምምነቶች ቢደረጉም በምዕራባውያኑ የተቀነበቡ በመሆናቸው ተፈጻሚ ሊሆኑ አልቻሉም። በእነዚህ ዓመታት አፍጋኒስታን የአጥፍቶ ጠፊዎች የሽብር ጥቃት ማዕከል ነበረች። የሰዎች ሞትም ተለምዷዊ ሆኖ ቆይቷል። ሰሜናዊቷ አፍሪካዊ ሀገር ሊቢያ የኒዮ ኮሎኒያሊዝም ቤተ ሙከራ ሌላኛው ጣቢያ ነች። እንደ አውሮፓውያን አቆጣጠር 2011 ላይ በምዕራባውያኑ የሰሜን አትላንቲክ የጦር ቃል ኪዳን ድርጅት ኔቶ ድጋፍ የረጅም ጊዜ የሊቢያ መሪ የነበሩት መሐመድ ጋዳፊ ከስልጣን ተባረሩ። መሐመድ ጋዳፊ የቱኒዚያና የግብጽ የጸደይ አብዮትን ተከትሎ ከመንበረ ስልጣናቸው ቢነሱም በእሳቸው ፋንታ በምዕራባውያን አማካኝነት የተመሰረተው ብሔራዊ የሽግግር መንግስትን ገርሰው ስልጣን ለመያዝ ከኔቶ ጋር ጦር ቢማዘዙም ኋላ ላይ ግን ተይዘው ተገደሉ። ይህን ተከትሎ በሊቢያ አዲስ ለውጥ መጣ ቢባልም የሆነው ግን በተቃራኒው ነው። ሊቢያውያን መተንፈሻ የሚያሳጣ የእርስ በርስ ግጭት፣ ጦርነትና እልቂት ውስጥ ገቡ። በሊቢያ የሚንቀሳቀሱ ኃይሎች የራሳቸውን ይሁን የሌሎች የውጭ ሀገራትን ፍላጎት ለማሳካት ሳያውቁት ነፍጥ አነገቡ። ሳውዲ አረቢያ፣ የተባበሩት አረብ ኤሚሬቶችና ጆርዳን ጽንፈኞችን ከቀጠናው መጽዳት አለባቸው በሚል ሳቤ ተመድ ደግሞ እውቅና ለተሰጠው መንግስት ከለላ ለመሆን በማለት ቱርክ፣ ፈረንሳይ፣ ጣሊያን፣ ኳታርና አሜሪካ በየፈርጃቸው ታጣቂዎችንና ጦሩን በማስታጠቅና የተለያዩ ድጋፎችን በማድረግ ሊቢያን የጦር ምድር አደረጓት። በሊቢያ የእርስ በርስ ጦርነት እጃቸውን በቀጥታም ሆነ በተዘዋዋሪ የሚያስገቡት ሀገራት ቁጥር ከፍ ያለ ነው። ለዚህ ደግሞ የመጀመሪያው ምክንያት ሰሜን አፍሪካዊቷ ሊቢያ ከፍተኛ የሆነ የተፈጥሮ ጋዝ ክምችት ያላት ሀገር መሆኗ ነው። ሊቢያ በተፈጥሯዊ ጋዝ ገበያ ላይ ተጽዕኖ ፈጣሪ ሀገር መሆን ችላለች። መዳረሻቸውን አውሮፓ ለማድረግ ከአፍሪካ የሚሰደዱ ወጣቶች መነሻቸውን የሚያደርጉት ከሊቢያ ነው። ከኢራቅና ሶሪያ ድል የተመታው ጽንፈኛው አይኤስ በሊቢያ በረሃዎች ላይ እግሩን ከቷል። እነዚህና ሌሎች ምክንያቶች ተደማምረው ቀጠናው ብዙ ፈላጊዎችን መፍጠር ችሏል። በብዙ ፍላጎቶች የተወጠሩ የሊቢያ ኃይሎችና ሌሎች ሀገራት ሊቢያን ሰላም ነስተዋት አመታት ነግደዋል። መሐመድ ጋዳፊ ከስልጣን እስኪገረሰሱ ድረስ ብቻ 30,000 ንጹሃን ሊቢያውያን በግጭቱ ሳቢያ ለህልፈት ተዳርገዋል። 50,000 የሚሆኑት ደግሞ በጥይት ቆስለዋል። በሁሉም ታጣቂ ኃይሎች የተኩስ አቁም ስምምነት እስከ ተደረገበት ባለፈው አመት ኦክቶበር ወር ድረስ ባሉት 6 ወራት ብቻ ቢያንስ 2,000 ሊቢያውያን ህይወታቸውን አጥተዋል። 146,000 የሚሆኑት የመኖሪያ ቀያቸውን ጥለው ተሰደዋል። በምዕራባውያኑ ገደብ የለሽ ፍላጎትና ጥቅም ወዳድነት ብዙ ሀገሮች ፈርሰዋል። ዜጎቻቸው በረሃብ ተሰቃይተው ምጽዋት ጠያቂ ሆነዋል። እንደ አባቶቻቸው ለመቀራመት ያለፈው ይበቃል ያላሉ እንደ አሜሪካ ያሉ ኒዮ ኮሎኒያሊስት ሐሳብ አራማጆች አይናቸው አፍሪካን አሁንም እየቃኘ ነው። አንዳንድ ምዕራባውያን ሀገሮች ለጥቁር አፍሪካ ህዝቦች ሰላም፣ ክብር፣ ነጻነት፣ ፍትሃዊነትና ዘላቂ ልማት ከልባቸው ቆመው አያውቁም። በተለይ ለመላው ጥቁር ህዝብ ክብርና ነጻነት ተምሳሌት የሆነችው ሀገር ኢትዮጵያ አንድነቷ፣ ሉዓላዊነቷ፣ የብዝሃ ህዝቧ አብሮነት፣ ፍትሃዊነትና ዘላቂ ብልጽግናን ወደ ጎን ትተው የራሳቸውን ዓላማ ለማራመድ ደፋ ቀና ይላሉ። የኢትዮጵያ ብሔራዊ ጥቅምን አሳልፎ የማይሰጥ ጠንካራ መንግስት ሀገሪቷ እንዳላት ከሀገር ወዳድ ህዝብ የበቀለ ሀገር በቀል ዕውቀት፣ ታሪክና ባህል ባለቤት የሆነች ሀገር እንደሆነች የተረዱና ይህም መልካም ገጽ ያልጣማቸው ጫናቸው በርትቶ የሐሰት ውንጀላቸውን ማዕቀብና ሐሰተኛ ፕሮፓጋንዳቸውን እያሽጎደጎዱት ነው። ለዚህም እንዲረዳቸው ቅጥረኛና የውስጥ ባንዳም አሰልጥነው አሰማርተዋል። የኒዮ ኮሎኒያሊዝም ሐሳብ አራማጆች በዲፕሎማሲ በሰብአዊ በፖለቲካዊ በኢኮኖሚያዊና በሌሎች መስኮች ኢትዮጵያ ላይ ጫና ለማሳረፍ ያልፈነቀሉት ድንጋይ የለም። ለአብነትም አሜሪካ የጉዞ ማዕቀብ መጣል ብትችልም የምትሰጠውን እርዳታ ብትቀንስም ፈረንሳይ ደግሞ ከኢትዮጵያ ጋር ያላትን ወታደራዊ ስምምነት ብትሰርዝም ውጤት አላመጣላቸውም። በምዕራባውያኑ የሚታገዙት ስመጥር ዓለም አቀፍ ማህበራዊ ሚዲያዎች ደግሞ ሐሰተኛ መረጃዎችን ፈብርከው ለገበያ ቢያቀርቡትም ኢትዮጵያ ከፍ እንጂ ዝቅ አለላለቻቸው። እንደ ቢቢሲና ሲኤንኤን ያሉ የሚዲያ አውታሮች ሐሰተኛ መረጃዎችን ፈብርከው ለገበያ ሲያቀርቡ መረጃዎቹ አጋጣሚ በሆነ መልኩ ሙያዊ የአሰራር ጉድለት የሚታይባቸው ሳይሆኑ በሌላው መስክ ኢትዮጵያ ላይ እንደሚያደርጉት ጫናዎችና አሉታዊ ተጽዕኖዎችን በሰሜኑ የሀገሪቷ ክፍል ሰላምን እያወከና ሀገርን እያናወጠ ላለው የህወሓት ቡድን ድጋፍ ለማድረግ በቀጥታ የታለሙ ፕሮጀክቶች መሆናቸው ነው መረጃዎች የሚያመለክቱት።
How is this conflict, in your view, being misrepresented, particularly in the American media, and why do you think it's so one-sided?
Well, my guess is that the U.S. is going with their old partner, right? TPLF was their partner for a very long time, from 91 to 28.
እንደምገምተው አሜሪካውያን ከቆየ አጋራቸው ጋር ናቸው። TPLF ለረጅም ጊዜ አጋራቸው ነው፣ ከ1991 እስከ 2018። እርግጠኛ ነኝ በርከት ያሉ የግል ግንኙነቶች፣ የፋይናንስ ጥቅሞችና ሌሎችም በጥቅም ላይ የተመሰረተ ወዳጅነቶች ነበሯቸው። እነዚህ መጠቃቀሞች ግን ለኢትዮጵያውያን የተረፉ አልነበሩ።
Joining us now live from Addis.
ቢላኔ ስዩም ከአዲስ አበባ በቀጥታ ተቀላቀለናለች። ስለተቀላቀልሽን እናመሰግናለን።
እኛ የምንጋራው አንድ ነገር ኢትዮጵያ የተቀናጀ የመገናኛ ብዙሃን ዘመቻ እንደተከፈተባት ነው። የሀገሪቱን ገጽታ ለማጥፋት ብሎ የጠቅላይ ሚኒስትሩና አስተዳደሩን ገጽታ ለማጥልሸት ጭምር የተከፈተ ዘመቻ ነው። እንደ ሲኤንኤን፣ ኒውዮርክ ታይምስ፣ ዋሽንግተን ፖስት እና ሮይተርስ የመሳሰሉት መገናኛ ብዙሃን ደግሞ በተናጠል ደጋግመው የተበላሸ ምስል ለመፍጠር አስፈላጊ እውነታዎችን ሆን ብለው በመተው እየዘገቡ ይገኛሉ። ይህንን ላንቺ ደግሜ ለመንገር የፈለኩትም መግቢያሽ ላይ የተጠቀምሽው የንግግር መስመር ትክክለኛ ተጠያቂነት ማላይ መውደቅ እንዳለበት የሚያሳይ ስለሆነ ነው። የኒዮ ኮሎኒያሊዝም ሐሳብ አራማጅ የሆኑት አንዳንድ ምዕራባውያን የኢትዮጵያን አንጡር ሀብት ለግላቸው ጥቅም ሊያውሉት ሲሞክሩ በሴቶችና ህፃናት በግብረ ሰናይ ድርጅት ሰራተኞች በሰላማዊ ዜጎች ላይ ከሰባዊነት ጋር የተያያዙ የሐሰት ክሶችን በመምዘዝ የኢትዮጵያ መንግስት ላይ አሉታዊ ተጽዕኖ ለማሳደር ሲጥሩ ታይተዋል።
Possible war crimes in Ethiopia. Amnesty International exposed the horror of a massacre.
ኢትዮጵያ ላይ የተቃጡት ሐሰተኛና ኢሰባዊ የሆኑ ክሶች ከእውነታው ጋር የማይጣጣሙ ስለመሆናቸው በኢትዮጵያና በዓለም አቀፍ ደረጃ በሰባዊ መብት ላይ የሚሰሩ ተቋማት በጥምር ያወጡት ሪፖርት ያመለክታል።
The issue of genocide,
ከዘር ማጥፋት ጋር በተያያዘ የተለያዩ በዘር ጎሳ ላይ ተመስርተው ተካሂዱ የሚባሉ ወንጀሎች በተደጋጋሚ ቢሰሙም በሪፖርቱ ግን የዘር ማጥፋት ወንጀል ባህሪ የሚገልጽ በቂ ማስረጃን አላገኘንም።
ኢትዮጵያ ላይ አይናቸውን ያሳረፉ ምዕራባውያን ህወሓት የጀመረውን የጥፋት ስራ ምንነት በውል ሊረዱት ፍላጎት የላቸውም። እንደው በደፈናው የትግራይ ክፍል ተከቧል፣ የትግራይ ህዝብ ለረሃብ ተጋልጧል የሚሉ የተቀነባበሩ ትርክቶች እንዲናፈሱ ብቻ ነው ሲሰሩ የሚታየው። የህወሓት ጦር ራሱን አጠናክሮ ሌላ ጦርነት በአማራና በአፋር ክልሎች ላይ ማካሄድ ሲጀምር ከ9 ዓመት ጀምሮ ለወታደርነት እየመለመለ ሲያዘምት በማይካድራ ንጹሃንን ሲጨፈጭፍም ሆነ ጥቃት ሲፈጽም አንድም ነገር ለማለት አልፈለጉም። ምክንያቱም የነሱ ግብ ይህ አይደለምና።
This is Ethiopia. This is my cadre, to be exact. And in this community, at least 1,564 people were slaughtered.
ይህ ኢትዮጵያ ነው። የምገኝበት ልዩ ቦታው ማይካድራ ነው። የዚህ አካባቢ ነዋሪ የነበሩ 1564 ዜጎች በግፍ ተገድለዋል። ምዕራባውያን ሚዲያዎች ግን ለሽብር ቡድኑ ወግነዋል።
4 people were slaughtered. And yet the Western media has consistently taken the TPLF side.
Tigrayans are a minority.
The Western media, they are here, I don't know, with their
ምዕራባውያን መገናኛ ብዙሃን መረጃዎቻቸውን ሚዛናዊ ሲያደርጉ አይስተዋሉም። ይልቅ ለአንድ ወገን የወገኑ መረጃዎችን ነው የሚያሰራጩት። እነዚህ መረጃዎችም የሽብር ቡድኑን የሚደግፉ ዘገባዎች ናቸው። በተደጋጋሚ የሽብር ቡድኑን ከፊት አድርገው መረጃዎችን ሲያወጡ የብዙሃኑን ማለትም ኢትዮጵያውያንን ሲያደምጡም አይስተዋሉም።
Most of the time they don't try to listen to the wider society.
Nobody reported the fact except you in Ethiopia that hundreds of humanitarian aid trucks have gone into the
በኢትዮጵያ ከሚገኘው የተባበሩት መንግስታት ተልእኮ ውጪ ከወርሃ ሐምሌ እስከ መስከረም አጋማሽ ድረስ ወደ ትግራይ ክልል ገብተው ስላልተመለሱ የሰብአዊ እርዳታ መኪኖች ትንፍሽ ያለ አካል የለም። በዚያው ጊዜ ከህወሓት ጋር ግንኙነት ባላቸው ቴሌቪዥን ጣቢያዎች በከባድ መኪኖች የተጫኑ ታጣቂዎች በሺዎች የሚቆጠሩ ሰዎች ወደ ተገደሉባቸው የአፋርና አማራ ክልሎች ሲጓጓዙ አይተናል። እነዚህ ነገሮች ግን በሲኤንኤን በኒውዮርክ ታይምስ እና ኤፒ አይዘገቡም። እንደውም ሙሉ በሙሉ ችላ ተብሏል።
Completely ignoring the fact that the rebels are actually using the aid that has gone in for the purpose of war.
አንዳንድ ምዕራባውያን ኢትዮጵያን ለማዳከም ኢኮኖሚዋን ማዳከም ሌላው ስልታቸው ነው። እርዳታዎችን መሰረዝ፣ ያለምንም ጥያቄና ማቅማማት አጓ ላይ እግድ መፍጠርና ሌሎች ኢኮኖሚያዊ ጫናዎችን በማኖር ሌሎች ሀገራት ላይ እንዳደረጉት ኢትዮጵያን የእርስ በርስ ግጭት ውስጥ መክተትና የማልቅ አዘቅት ውስጥ እንድትወድቅ ማድረግ ነው ምኞታቸው። ለዚህ ደግሞ እንደ አሸባሪው ህወሓት ያሉ ባንዳዎችን በመደገፍና በማገዝ የአፍሪካ ቀንድን በመቆጣጠር የንግድ የመዋለ ንዋይ ፈሰስ፣ የደህንነት፣ የሚሊተሪና የጂኦፖለቲካ የበላይነትን ማግኘት ነው። አንዳንድ ምዕራባውያን ባለስልጣናት ቢሆንላቸው በሶሪያ፣ በኢራቅ፣ በአፍጋኒስታን፣ በሊቢያና በየመን እንዳደረጉት ሁሉ ሌሎች ሀገሮች ላይም ሴራቸው ግብ መጥቶ ማየት ቢችሉ ይመርጣሉ። እነዚህ ምዕራባውያን ተመሳሳይ ሴራዎችንና ጫናዎችን ቢያደርጉባቸውም አሁን እነዛን ጫናዎች ተቋቁመው ማላይ ያሉ እንደ ቻይና፣ ቱርክና ህንድ የመሳሰሉ ሀገራት ኢትዮጵያ ከተጋረጠባት አደጋ ለመዳን ዜጎቿ ነገን በተስፋ ተሻግረው በሚወዷት ሀገራቸው በሰላም እንዲሁም ያለምንም ኢኮኖሚያዊ ችግር እንዲኖሩ የሚያስችል ተሞክሮ እንዳለ የሚያመላክቱ ናቸው።
ወራትነን ልጆቿን አንወድም ጥቃትን
እኛ ደግሞ ኢትዮጵያውያን ነን። ግድ የሚለን ጊዜው አሁን ነው።
ምሽትና አዲስ አበባ በልዩ መልኩ የራሷን ልዩ ገጽታ እንድትላበስ ያስቻለ ታሪካዊ የሆነው ቦታ
አየሩ ራሱ ደስ ይላል።
አቀማመጥሽ ማርኮኝ እንዳንቺ ልቀመጥ ነው የመጣሁት። ሲበሉ አድርሰን ያው ባህላችን ነው በጣም
ማታም በጣም ወድጄዋለሁ።
መቀመጥ ትችላለሽ፣ መዝናናት አለ፣ ባይኮች አሉ፣ መንዳት ትችላለሽ።
ቢዚ የሆነ አእምሮሽን መጥተሽ ሪፍሬሽ የምታደርጊው እዚህ ነው።
ልክ እንደዚህ ውሎውን ከማህደሮ የሚያኖሩበት በጣም ነፃነት ይሰማል። እዚህ
the best ከሚባሉ በዓለም ላይ ታዋቂ ከሚሆኑ ቦታዎች አንዷ ለመሆን
Hello there, you're watching Addis Media Network, Addis TV. We thank you for being with us. I'm in Assassin's with us for his first, the top headlines. The Ethiopian Defense Task Force in Brussels, Belgium, urges some Western countries to stop meddling in the internal affairs of sovereign countries. United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, disclosed that it is working to supply humanitarian support to the Tigray region. Welcome back to stay with us. Government Communication Service announced that Ethiopians across the nation are set to pay homage to the massacred Ethiopian National Defense Forces Northern Command members by the treacherous TPLF on November 3rd, with the team will never forget the day. The Minister of State for Government Communication Service, Kabede Desisa, delivered a statement regarding the occasion. In his statement, the State Minister recalled that a large number of members of the National Defense Forces who were guarding the Tigray region were massacred by the terrorist TPLF on November 3. He mentioned that the day will be commemorated throughout the country. Kabede stated that this barbaric act will always be remembered as a crime of treason that will never be forgotten in the nation's history. He said following the Ethio-Eritrea war during the peaceful times that Defense Force members cultivated field schools and roads, provided medical service and served as the protectors of the people of Tigray. Despite all this, the treacherous TPLF mercilessly massacred the Northern Command members on November 3, 2020. The State Minister stated that the unprovoked attack on the defense members was the beginning of the TPLF and its allies' plot and deliberate mission to dismantle Ethiopia. He added the day will be commemorated commemorated in all government institutions at federal and regional levels. Kapita says the commemoration aims to recognize and honor the sacrifices made by the valiant defense forces. It also further aims to remember the attack as part of the country's black history so that it does not happen again in Ethiopia. Ethiopian ambassador to Qatar, Faisal Ali Ibrahim, said some Westerners do not want to condemn the terrorist TPLF for the atrocities and they do not accept the reality on the ground. Bethlehem Tashari has more.
In an exclusive interview with Ethiopian news agency, Ethiopian ambassador to Qatar, Faisal Ali, said that from the very beginning, the terrorist TPLF had never been democratic and loyal to Ethiopian interests. He added that the conflict in the north is the TPLF that attacked the Northern Command in Mekelle on November 4, 2020, which was not, of course, hidden and secret to the international community, as TPLF declared that on various media, which the Western media and countries do not want to recognize. Faisal Ali said that when TPLF force was defeated and its leaders moved out of Mekelle, escaping into the mountain of Tigray region, the government declared a ceasefire so that Tigray farmers would use the rainy season for farming. Again, the Western didn't recognize it.
The second round of the conflict is also declared by the TPLF terrorist group. This is not also secret. They say we're going to launch an attack on neighboring regions, and they did it. The Western media and the Western countries, they don't want to even condemn openly the aggression by the TPLF terrorist group to the neighboring Amhara and Afar regions.
He added that the government declared an unhindered humanitarian truce in last March 2022. 5 months after that, the TPLF only used that truce period not to help people of Tigray, but to rearm and reorganize itself for the third round of attack on neighboring regions. The ambassador said that the TPLF has committed various atrocities, including killing civilians, raping women, and killing kids, and urging that the Western power and countries, including their media, to see the realities that are happening in Ethiopia.
The past 3 rounds of the aggression and massacre done by the TPLF terrorist group is supported financially, diplomatically, and also intelligence support, including the media support by the help of these foreign external elements. So this is their project. They don't want to openly accepting what's the reality happening on the ground and condemning the TPLF terrorist group, because TPLF is only serving their interest in this part of the region.
According to the ambassador, the war TPLF launched in the media campaign is not just against some elements of the society, it's against Ethiopia and is supported by media propaganda and diplomacy to destabilize Ethiopia. He also explained that Ethiopians need to stand together against the interest of foreign actors who want to destabilize Ethiopia and who want them to be diverted from their development agenda.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia has issued a statement concerning the death and injuries caused due to the collapse of a bridge in India's Gujarat state. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia said that it has learned with sadness that many people lost their lives and were wounded due to the collapse of a bridge in the Gujarat state of India on October 30, 2022. The ministry expresses heartfelt condolences to the people and government of India and to the families of those who lost their lives and wishes a speedy recovery to those injured in the tragic incident.
Can we look back what has really changed?
The European Union has withdrawn that statement from its its policy recommendations.
A rally in Brussels in front of the European Commission.
There is a little bit loosening in terms of pressure, but it's not as what we need.
What is the major agenda of your task force in order to make that diversified and
our unity comes from our Ethiopian identity, which also respects our ethnic, religious identities.
Still, the international community choosing to believe the narratives being made by the terrorist TPLF.
One of the reasons is their own geopolitical interest.
Well, everyone, we'll invite to use a full interview after the news hour. Ethiopian Airlines has officially started a flight to Zurich, Switzerland. During the launching ceremony, Ethiopian Airlines Group CEO Mesfin Tasso says the commitment of the commencement of the new flight to Zurich will help to further strengthen the economic, social and political relations between Africa and European countries. Malit tells more.
Ethiopian Airlines is becoming one of the most competent airlines in the world. Ethiopian has also expanded its services to Switzerland, Zurich, increasing its destination to Europe. During the launch ceremony of the new flight, Ethiopian Airlines Group CEO Mesfin Tasso said that the commencement of the new flight to Zurich by the Ethiopian Airlines will help to further strengthen the economic, social and political relations between African and European countries. According to the CEO, Zurich will be the second destination after Geneva in Switzerland.
We are glad to open a new route connecting the financial capital of Switzerland, Zurich, with over 130 destinations of Ethiopian Airlines via Africa's political capital Addis Ababa. The citizens of Switzerland can directly travel to African countries via Ethiopian Airlines, and Africans can also directly fly from Addis Ababa to Zurich.
He also stated that the new flight will expand Ethiopian presence in Switzerland and Europe at large and provide enhanced air connectivity between Switzerland and Ethiopia.
Africa and Europe has multiple relations in politics, trade, tourism. Hence, the new service will also facilitate diplomatic and socio-economic relations, not only between Ethiopia and Switzerland, but also between Africa and Europe. As a Pan-African carrier, we are committed to further expand our global network and connect Africa with the rest of the world better than ever before.
With the launch of services to Zurich, Ethiopian Airlines flights to Switzerland will increase to 7 per week. On the other hand, Embassy of Switzerland Deputy Head of Mission in Ethiopia, Oliver Hohen, said that the new flight to Zurich will further boost the bilateral relations of the countries, noting that the city is the center of business and finance in Switzerland. The head also stated that Zurich is one of the best places convenient to trade and economic activities.
New additional connection to Zurich, the economic capital of Switzerland. We trust that this trade and this cultural, socio-economic connection can further prosper. Zurich is a great place. It has fantastic opportunities in terms of commerce and trade. It has excellent education, it has culture, it has football, it has a lake, it has a lot to offer. And so we really believe that this is part of intensifying relations between Ethiopia and Switzerland. A recent governmental strategy by Switzerland identifies Ethiopia as one of the economic lions of the continent.
On a related news, the Ethiopian Airlines has also launched a new flight to Zimbabwe, Bulawayo today, increasing its destination to 3 in the country. Ambassador of Ethiopia to Zimbabwe, Rashid Mohammed, attended the inaugural flight ceremony of Ethiopian Airlines to Bulawayo. In his speech, Ambassador Rashid congratulates the commencement of the first flight of Ethiopian Airlines to Bulawayo and noted that this direct flight is a new milestone in the history and bilateral relations of the two countries. Ethiopian Airlines Group CEO Mesfin Tasso on his part said that the new flight to Bulawayo, which is one of the industry centers of Zimbabwe, will help to enhance the economic, political and diplomatic cooperation of the two countries. Ethiopian Airlines has been flying to 2 other cities in Zimbabwe, Harare and Victoria Falls, with its first flight to Harare in 1980s. It was also mentioned that Ethiopian Airlines has been exerting extra effort to import additional airplanes with a view to expand its destinations across the globe.
It has been said that the digital technology seen in the Science Museum would practically be foundational for digitizing all sectors in the country. Visiting the museum, African youth said there is really a reform in Ethiopia. They also expressed their admiration about what the country is doing in terms of technology. We have more on this. It is known that Ethiopia inaugurated the first science and art museum weeks ago aimed at digitizing the country. The museum will lay foundation for digitization in various fields, which in turn increases the productivity, efficiency and reliability of the socio-economic sectors. The digital technologies seen in the museum practically be foundational for digitizing all sectors in the country. The museum is of paramount importance and a great contribution towards realizing digital economy and a technologically developing country. Currently, the museum is being visited by the public in connection with the African Youth Summit. The youth representing different African countries had also the opportunity to visit the museum. While visiting it, they expressed their amusement by what they've seen.
I have the opportunity to also come to the Science Museum, which amazed me that it got a lot of prosperity, and it also proposed the smart technology that the Ethiopia, especially the Africa, needs today. So the equipment and the facility that we've seen here today is something that is really important for technology and for Africa to develop and to target its goals.
But when I googled, I didn't see the important things that I saw today. I was so impressed. What I saw was the nice places, the nice story buildings, and some important information that you need to know in Ethiopia, and some nice places that you would like to visit. Yes, but today I am so impressed going to the Air Force of Ethiopia, seeing the Air Force being a landscape, I can say, containing so many important activities or articles that will help the improvement of the Air Force, and that will also attract the attention of other people, and that will motivate the young people also to go and join the Air Force.
We were satisfied beyond doubt that there is a really reform in those institutions, especially in security sector. So we actually went up to where the Air Force trying their level best to renovate the whole aircrafts. And in our presence, we have seen that there is a hope that Ethiopia will not longer look for a aircraft outside, but they will depend on themselves.
I have never seen an African country. I've visited a lot of countries in Africa, but I have never seen a country that is invested heavily in the resources that they have. Starting from the military resources, from where we were at the Ethiopian Air Force, we saw a lot of things from manufacturing up to assembly, and also they have an academy where they are able to teach the graduates, or rather the students, to be able to do their own things. So leading up to the military, where the headquarters of the defense force, we saw a lot of things, the infrastructure that they have. It shows that indeed they uphold the democracy that the Ethiopian government has, and also they are able to invest in a lot of things that are able to sustain them security-wise.
The realization of the museum proves that the country has been in the right track to achieve digitization in socio-economic and political sectors. The museum would enable the new generation to practically exercise its theoretical knowledge and change them into realities. It will also enhance Ethiopia's competitiveness and excellence in science and technology.
How did you gauge the offensive launched by the terrorist attack?
So this is it is unfortunate that we engaged in such harmful activity.
Do you think the rest of African countries are awakening?
Africa of today is different than Africa of 100 years ago.
Despite all the challenges, the pressures, emanated from both external and internal forces. The government of Ethiopia, led by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, has still vigorously been undertaking and accomplishing a number of mega projects. Are the challenges inspiring him to do more and register better results?
They told he will obey or he will take their direction. But he said, this is Ethiopia. There is no way that such thing could be done.
Of course, they really wanted to bring Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to his knees.
Yes, that's what he is an Ethiopian. He is what essential Ethiopian.
You're watching Addis TV. Ethiopians abroad and at home have been staging rallies denouncing the Western influence on Ethiopia. In an exclusive interview with Addis Media Network coordinator and the Ethiopian Defense Task Force in Brussels, Ephraim Zawdu said some Western countries should stop interfering in the internal affairs of sovereign countries in the name of ensuring world peace. Babur Dwang presents Meseret Tajeb's report.
Ethiopian diasporas living in different countries in the world has been undertaking different demonstrations denouncing Western interference and stop undue pressures on Ethiopia. In the United States of America and Europe, major rallies have been undertaken and are still being conducted by Ethiopians and friends of Ethiopia living abroad. Addis Media Network has held an interview with the coordinator of Defense Ethiopia Task Force in Brussels, Ephraim Zawdu, on various agendas, especially on the Western interference in Ethiopia affair. Ephraim said that the rallies they conducted in Europe have somehow bore fruit, such as denouncing the meddling of the European Union in Ethio-Sudan border issues. Mentioning the last two rallies that were undertaken in Brussels, Ephraim indicated that there are a few changes but more efforts are needed from the diasporas to influence Western policymakers.
In terms of change, there needs a lot to be done from our side. They have their own different reasons, including geopolitical interest and their own policy for what they do. But from our side, we have already informed them. They know the facts. They have a lot of information. We have provided them objective information of the realities on the ground, and it's up to them to take into account all those objective informations.
Ephraim Zawdu went on elaborating the destruction that have been caused in some countries in the world because of unfair interference into domestic affairs of nations by Western superpowers. He also said that the result of such interference can be seen in countries such as Syria, Libya and Yemen, and hence he strongly stressed that the international community and Western forces should stop these acts on Africa. Ephraim said that the Horn of Africa in particular doesn't need any commotion and instability in the region that happened in Syria and Yemen.
The aftermath and the consequences of such destructive interventions has displaced hundreds of millions of people, has killed tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of civilians, and has destroyed the countries. So we don't want another Syria, another Libya, another Yemen in the East Africa.
Ephraim further urged the international community to stop unnecessary interference in sovereign states to ensure the world peace.
For the Western leaders, we are saying that interventionist policy in Ethiopia would not solve the problem. It would worsen it. It would add a fuel to the conflict rather than solving it. It would not bring peace to the country. It would only protract the conflict. So that is our message to the international community.
It is known that Ethiopian diaspora abroad and at home have been undertaking mass rallies in order for the Western countries to see the fact on the ground in Ethiopia and to also stop false narratives against the country.
It is disclosed that the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, is working to supply humanitarian support to the liberated areas of Tigray region. Country Director of the organization, Michael Saad, said OCHA has been trying to cope up with the situation as facilities in the northern part flared up since the end of August 2022. Alalita Meskin has more from MENA.
The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, or OCHA, has been trying to cope up with facilities as situations in the northern part flared up since the end of August 2022, Country Director Michael Saad said. In an exclusive interview with Ethiopian news agency, Michael Saad said that OCHA has seen a high number of displacements, especially in the beginning to the end of September, where the situation on the ground in terms of hostilities started changing, and from early October, some people started to return by their own or with the help of humanitarian partners to their town of origin. OCHA and other partners are working very hard in several parts of Afar and within Tigray region, in the main hub in a smaller town from Shire to Mekelle, he said.
We maintain the presence in Shire and in Mekelle, in Aksum and other towns all throughout. Now, of course, we had to keep what we call critical staff, those who are doing only life-saving interventions and less, that things that we can wait a little bit. And we did welcome very much the announcement by the government, like opening the arms and calling for support into the areas that were very difficult to reach for some time.
It is noted that Government Communications Service issued a statement that the government will coordinate with the relevant humanitarian agencies to provide humanitarian aid to areas that have come under the control of the Ethiopian National Defense Force, including via the Shire airport. The country director further said that the organization has been in discussion with the federal and regional government level, as well as zonal administrators, on how to scale up such sorts of activities.
We have started one assessment mission this week towards the area of Kobo, Raya Alamata, up to Alamata, and hopefully this will lead after to some more support. Either on the weekend or on Monday, we will start another assessment mission from Adi Arkai to Maitsebri, and another one from Humera all the way towards approaching Shire. Now, I think this will be the first step, and then for the second step, we will be discussing also with the federal government to see how we can be able to support also those people who are staying in Shire or Shiraro or other areas.
The country director also pointed out that OCHA is aiming to go and identify the priorities currently on the ground with authorities in areas where they have not been yet. The office is trying to highlight all the humanitarian need wherever they are and link up with humanitarian partners and government partners, he added. OCHA has a humanitarian response plan which is launched every year. For this year, initially, $3 billion has been asked as a pledge to cover the needs of all people in Ethiopia who are in need of humanitarian assistance.
The African Youth Summit, which was initiated by the Ethiopian government, is to be concluded today. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is expected to give recognition to those who have made efforts to promote the vision of Pan-Africanism in the continent and beyond. Hikmat Tamam has more.
Hello everyone, so Africa Youth Summit is on the conclusion today. So the conclusion is being held here in Addis Ababa in the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. So during the time of the conclusion, of course in the morning, there were a lot of discussions about the African challenges, to provide an African solutions, as well as there were discussions by the former president of Ethiopia, Mulatu Teshome, and former president of Ghana as well. So this delegates, the high-level delegates, has been, discussing on the issue of the challenges that the continent is facing at large. So it is known that the African Youth Summit was kicked off in Addis Ababa to stay for 4 consecutive days, and today we are witnessing the conclusion. So during this 4 days, there were a lot of discussions as well as visits here in Addis Ababa. Specifically, we can mention the Ethiopian Science Museum and the Ministry of Mines as well. So the users have been visiting Addis Ababa and around to make sure what Ethiopia is really about. So during the summit, mainly, the summit mainly aims at promoting the Pan-Africanism vision. So the head of the initiative, who is the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, the Ethiopian government, is expected to be here to to give recognitions to those who have promoted, the Pan-Africanism vision, because the summit is all about Pan-Africanism, in which it was formed in the late 1960s. So this Pan-Africanism has seemed that the youth are really interested about to promote as well as to spread around the world. So regarding to the conclusion, Addis Media Network, Addis Television has conducted an interview with the users, some of them who have came from different African countries, and I think they have their conclusion that the summit was really fruitful. It was more than a discussion, because in today's world, in the modern, which is the 21st century, youths are the change makers and around the globe. So Africa, that is what it is doing. It's using the youths to just walk to the development process as well as to the prosperity of the continent. So let's take a look, and I will head you to the interviewees that I have did today. So let's take a look.
So this summit is the first African Youth Leadership Summit, and this is a huge deal for all of us, because by the end of the day, it's giving us a voice to actually speak with African leaders on what needs to be done for our generation. So this is a huge impactful moment for all of us, and I'm very happy to be here. One thing I got from the African Youth Summit is there are a lot of plans to actually be put into fruition to make sure that our continent is thriving, whether it's food security, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's actual road rails to actually connect all the African countries. We're moving forward to make sure that what we need to do to be connected as one, and hearing all of these ideas is incredible.
This has been a wonderful experience. Thank you so much to the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia and the people of Ethiopia. Thank you for the hospitality. It's the inaugural African Youth Summit. Quite an experience. I think it needs to happen more and more and more. This has been a display by the African Union that it has an intention to take young people seriously. We think that they should continue to do so, and all other African regions should learn from this, so that it's not only the African Union but our governments also take young people seriously. If a country or a people or a nation do not take its youth seriously, then that nation is doomed for disaster. And this has been a display, especially by the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, that the future of Africa depends on its young people. And we are so proud and so happy to have been involved in this. My first time inside the African Union Mandela Hall, something I only see on TV. And for me to sit there and make contributions on behalf of young people from Southern Africa, truly a wonderful experience. I learned a lot. I have a lot of new friends. And this is how we were able to defeat oppression, by ensuring that as African people we have relations. And I think that this is a beginning by our African leaders, ensuring that we know each other from our youth, so that we do not meet in the United Nations, but we understand each other through our growth. We grow together so that we can build the continent together.
Do you think those in the Agenda 2063 about food security has been implemented or addressed?
It was not yet addressed. I wish they were addressed.
So what do you think Africans really need to do to depend on themselves?
It is important to focus on internal and efficiently and effectively utilize the available African resource.
So what is your opinion on wheat export that we are currently undertaking?
I am in favor of wheat export. So you export wheat, you can get foreign exchange, you can import other food items, for instance, medicines, machineries, and other necessary, equipments.
What are the solutions that are suitable for our country to boost our economy?
So government should properly manage, public expenditure.
Finally, the Ethiopian electric utility has been restored to Alamata, Korem, Wajat, Muga and Kobo towns following the completion of the transmission lines maintenance. Electric power was cut off in these areas for a while following the destruction of electricity infrastructure by the tourist TPLF. According to Ethiopian electric utilities Waldea district, these areas have regained electricity service following the swift maintenance of the electricity infrastructure to restore the service. It is also mentioned that the areas have been without power for a long time. You're watching Addis Media Network, where the forecast is next. Well, everyone, that's it for now from Addis Media Network. Addis TV. Thank you again for watching. Have a good time.
Hello viewers, you're watching Addis Media Network, Addis TV's English program. I am Mr. Tajaba. Today we're going to talk about the recently well-known Western pressure and what are the procedures that have been made in order to just change the attitude of the Western on Ethiopia. Also, what are the preconditions that are put by the diaspora community in order to reach the international community. I have a guest today via Zoom interview. Please introduce yourself for our audience.
Thank you very much, Masarat, for giving me the opportunity. My name is Ephraim Zodu, and I'm Ethiopian diaspora resident in Belgium.
To begin with, what you really do in the Defend Ethiopia Task Force. Just tell me a little bit about what you do in that organization.
Defend Ethiopia Task Force in Europe is organized to be a voice of Ethiopian people. We have been trying to be a voice to the voice of Ethiopian people on the international, towards the international community, reaching out to world leaders, Western leaders, especially because Brussels, Belgium is the seat of the European, it's a political capital of the European Union. Where the Commission, the External Action Service, and the Council are established and based with its headquarters. It's also a seat of major international institutions. So towards these institutions and Western leaders, we try to address, reach out to the voice of Ethiopian people and clarify the facts on the ground in Ethiopia so that they will be informed to take informed decision and correct and rectify their misguided policy towards Ethiopia.
Mm-hmm. Let's just go back to time last year, same time last year. It was back then where the diaspora in different parts of the world, especially the US and Europe, started denouncing the pressure of Western media and Western organizations. And even your Defend Task Force have been participating in demonstrations against this Western pressure. So can we look back what has really changed in a year?
Yes, we have been doing all the efforts because the war on Ethiopia has been an all-out war, combining hybrid, the digital war and media campaign and TPLF armed insurgency against Ethiopia's stability. So as an Ethiopian, we also have to do always to prevent the impact of this war. So one of the impacts was in diplomacy and through digital campaign and so on. So we have been trying to lobby to world leaders to inform them what is really happening, that TPLF started the war, that TPLF's armed insurgency protracted would destabilize Ethiopia, and their support to TPLF would protract the conflict and destabilize the Horn of Africa. So we have been trying out to reach to them, and not only in writing letters, in appearing to their through one-to-one meeting at their offices, but also through organizing massive demonstrations through the No More, the famous No More movement that has been held worldwide by the Ethiopian diaspora, including organized in Europe through Defend Ethiopia. So there were major demonstrations in the US and in Europe, from London, Brussels, Switzerland, and across different parts of Europe, to inform the international community about what's really happening in Ethiopia. And their undue pressure on Ethiopia is biased, is not factual, and is not objective. So we have been doing that. But in terms of what has really been changed from the Western policy side, there is somehow, for example, there are various recommendations that they have been suggesting that we tried to prevent. One of it, for example, is deploying an AU-led peacekeeping force on Ethiopia-Sudan border. We have denounced this recommendation that was proposed through the European Parliament resolution. We have stated that this is not a reasonable position. The Ethiopian government is safeguarding peace and stability in the area, and deploying a peacekeeping force would tantamount to destabilizing Ethiopia, because it would make Ethiopia's border vulnerable and it would enable TPLF's armed insurgency. Would also help it to gain weapons across the border. So it's not in the interest of Ethiopia, it's not in the interest of Ethiopian people, and it doesn't ensure peace and stability. So we have appealed this, and the European Union has withdrawn that statement from its policy recommendations. But in all these efforts, still the resolutions that have been passed are really biased, and we are still on insisting in informing them that they have to be objective in their evaluation and pursuing of policy towards Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa.
Yeah, you even staged a rally in Brussels in front of the European Commission headquarters. What change has it brought?
There is a little bit loosening in terms of pressure, but it's not as what we need. It needs a lot of more efforts. So we have staged demonstrations, for example, in front of US Embassy, because the major foreign policy of the EU is also coupled or directed by the US foreign policy. So we have staged also in front of United States Embassy in Brussels, but also in front of the European Commission and External Action Service also to inform them. In terms of change, there needs a lot to be done from our side. They have their own different reasons, including geopolitical interest and their own policy for what they do. But from our side, we have already informed them. They know the factors. They have a lot of information. We have provided them objective information of the realities on the ground, and it's up to them to take into account all those objective informations and rectify their positions. So what we are urging, what we are requesting, what we are appealing to them is to consider those factors and rectify their policies, their biased policies towards Ethiopia.
Ephraim, let's talk about the involvement of the diaspora, not only in denouncing the international pressure that is being waged in Ethiopia, but also in coordinating humanitarian assistance to people affected by the conflict, especially in the northern region. What were the activities done in the diaspora? Because since the past 2 years, there is a report that the involvement of the Ethiopian and Eritrean diaspora in the West and in Europe has made a little bit progress when it comes to sending aid to Ethiopia.
Yes, the Ethiopian diaspora, as well as our Eritrean brothers, have been trying to be voice for Ethiopian people in staging demonstrations, also conducting digital diplomacy through Twitter campaigns, the truth about the situation and the conflict in northern Ethiopia. In addition to that, what you have mentioned is also part of our activity to mobilize resources to people affected by the conflict and TPLF's armed insurgency. So as we know, TPLF's armed insurgency has displaced millions of Ethiopians in Afar and Amara region. It also made vulnerable our Tigrayan people in Tigray region because TPLF holds them hostage. So there is humanitarian crisis that is provoked, caused and sustained by TPLF's armed insurgency and belligerence. So from the diaspora side, we try to raise funds to affected communities in Afar, Amara region, and also as well as in Tigray region. So we try to provide humanitarian assistance. We try to collect resources and financial resources as well, to try to mobilize financial resources as well to help the affected communities by the conflict. That's one of the things also that we want to engage and continue and pursue, because there are millions of Ethiopians who are in urgent need of help and aid. So our work clearly puts, we know where this conflict came from. We know that TPLF instigated it. So we condemn the actions of TPLF, its belligerence, and at the same time, we try to help affected communities in Amara, Tigray, and Afar regions by TPLF's belligerence. So we have mobilized, we have conducted a series of fundraising events across Europe, and we have mobilized resources to help vulnerable people, not only affected by this conflict, but also in other parts of Ethiopia, in Oromia, in Somali region as well, because of drought and other other natural hazards as well. So we also mobilize resources, as you have mentioned, to help Ethiopians across the country.
As Brussels being the seat of the European Union and Europe in general, and you Ethiopians in Brussels have the mandate to collect and to come together the other diaspora community across Europe, right? And on the first rally that was made on December 2021, many Ethiopians came across all over Europe to join you at the rally in front of the European Commission headquarters. And apart from that, what are the tasks of the European diaspora community in Ethiopia in general, not only in Brussels, just across Europe?
The other tasks also, especially the primary task, I would put it this way: our primary task is to stand in solidarity with Ethiopian people at this challenging time, be a voice to the Ethiopian people, and at the same time try to unify Ethiopian diaspora, Ethiopians abroad, the diaspora, to stand united to help Ethiopia, but at the same time also to unify Ethiopians at home. We know that there are divisive agendas that propagate by TPLF in order to polarize Ethiopian politics and to create division and polarization among Ethiopians. So one of the tasks and the activities that we engage at is at unifying Ethiopians, informing Ethiopians that they should not be trapped by TPLF divisive propaganda and misinformation campaigns, but rather to unify and know that TPLF is the enemy of the entire Ethiopian people. So when we say this, we back it up with evidence. Ethiopian people has also seen that TPLF is the enemy of the entire Ethiopian people for the past 27 years in its while it was on power. So its dictatorial iron fist repressive regime. So we have seen that TPLF has committed genocide in Ogaden in 2008. 2009, we have seen that TPLF committed genocide in Gambela in 2003 and 2004. We have seen TPLF committed ethnic cleansing in Amara region, and in particular in Walqait Tagade areas. We know that TPLF has committed massacre on the Ethiopian youth during demonstrations, especially on Irrecha massacre in 2016, for example. So we know that TPLF has committed a lot of human rights atrocities in its notorious Maakalawi prison. So we keep on informing Ethiopians that TPLF has been an enemy. The common enemy to the Ethiopian people is TPLF, and it has not only been involved in repressing Ethiopians and committing atrocious human rights violations, but also in dividing Ethiopians through misinformation, disinformation campaigns, and trying to polarize Ethiopians, so that through that division, it would be enabled to nurture itself to further oppress Ethiopians.
I was coming to that, sorry to interrupt you, but are you, the diaspora community in Europe, are you unified? Because there are rumors that some part of the diaspora community is taking side with the terrorist TPLF, whereas the other is obviously siding to Ethiopian government or Ethiopia. And what is the major agenda of your task force in order to make that diversified and very shattered diaspora community in Europe? Not only in Ethiopia, but also in Europe.
As you have already mentioned, there are issues that try to divide the Ethiopian diaspora across Europe and also Ethiopians at home. In order to do that, what the TPLF community uses is it tries to divide us based on ethnicity, it tries to divide us based on religion, and based on ideological factor and other issues. And we try to unify Ethiopians, that our unity through our unity and our plurality doesn't contradict with, or is not mutually exclusive with, our Ethiopian identity. So our unity comes from our Ethiopian identity, which also respects our ethnic, religious, identities. But TPLF wants to use it to divide us, while we say that it's our strength, our plurality is our strength, our force of unity. But as you have said, there are efforts by TPLF and its supporters to create division among Ethiopian diaspora. From what we try to do is that we try to expose this tactic of misinformation, tactic of disinformation campaigns that aimed at destabilizing Ethiopians. Because we know that it is through the unity of Ethiopians that we have won TPLF and removed it from power, from Arat Kilo Palace. TPLF has been on power for 27 years. It has been repressing each and every Ethiopian. It is a common enemy to every Ethiopian. Ethiopians, through time, has learned that this is the common enemy and has made a conclusion that all Ethiopians have to stand united to remove TPLF from power. When Ethiopians got united, we removed it from power. It is now we believe that we are at the last stage of the struggle. Ethiopian people has provided a lot of opportunities to TPLF to correct itself and play a constructive role in Ethiopian politics, but TPLF has rejected it and continued its destabilization role. So it has become once again, it has become the responsibility of Ethiopian people to completely remove TPLF. It has become politically irrelevant. And now the Ethiopian people has also the responsibility to really neutralize its armed insurgency. So to the diaspora, we inform that it is TPLF that is the enemy of Ethiopian people. And that is what we have to focus at. And we have to focus on factors that unify us, that makes us stand united, because it's in our unity that we can win this struggle and we can also protect Ethiopia from destabilization. We also inform that failing to unify and to overcome this struggle is not an option, because those who have failed have lost their country. For example, we have a practical experience from countries that have been destabilized, for example, in Yemen, in Libya. We don't want Ethiopia to be another Libya. We don't want Ethiopia to be another Yemen. And no Ethiopian wants to see that. So it is in our responsibility to defend Ethiopia and thereby defending Ethiopian people. And the enemy that has been working day and night to destabilize Ethiopia is TPLF. That is the common enemy that Ethiopians has to unify and struggle and defeat it.
Mm-hmm. And recently, the United Nations Secretary General has stated that the conflict in Ethiopia or the general situation is out of control. And that has raised many concerns by the Ethiopian government, also people who are friends of Ethiopia as well. And what do you really understand by that, as someone who is residing in Europe and as someone who understands the hidden agenda of the Western organizations like the UN?
From our perspective, we have clearly stated that this is a double standard. In our recent demonstration also, that is what we have raised. No European country will allow an armed insurgency in its soil. No European country. No European country would allow illegal holding or possession of weapons. It is a very serious crime in Europe. Not only armed insurgency and possession of weapons, if you commit a minor traffic offense or if you pass by a red traffic light, you will be fined. You will receive a traffic fine at your home address. So if you break the law, if you commit an offense, be it a minor or a major, there will be consequences and you will be fined for it. When it comes to Ethiopia, so this means that law and order is really put in place in Europe so that you cannot commit any offense in Europe. And bear in mind, an armed insurgency would never be tolerated in any part of Europe, under any circumstance, be it protection of human rights or whatever. But when it comes to Africa, when it comes to Ethiopia, promoting such armed insurgency is contradictory to European values, is contradictory to Western values as well. So to the UN Secretary General as well, what you have mentioned that the situation in Ethiopia is not out of control. Their premises is based on, they are based on followed premises that they withdrew a biased conclusion on the situation in Ethiopia and formulated a misguided policy on their approach to Ethiopia. So they have to correct their premise and the wrong conclusion and have to rectify and reformulate and recalibrate their misguided policy on Ethiopia. So it is a clear double standard. If you don't allow an armed insurgency in Europe, if you don't allow illegal possession of weapons in Europe, you don't have to allow it when it comes to Africa. You don't have to allow it when it comes to Ethiopia. Even if they want to allow it, Ethiopia doesn't want to allow it. Ethiopia is a sovereign country. It has law and it has to ensure law and order is respected for the safety and well-being of Ethiopian people, including our Tigrayan people. So allowing an armed insurgency or promoting an armed insurgency is contradictory to the UN values, is contradictory to European values, is contradictory to Ethiopian laws and international laws and norms. So it is clear that it's a double standard that they need to rectify and recalibrate.
We're back, our viewers. You're watching Addis Media Network, Addis TV's English program. I am with Ephraim Zaudu, the Ethiopian Defend Task Force Brussels coordinator. And we've been talking about the Western pressure and the rallies that have been made so far. And Ephraim, if you really think about it, the reason behind the Western pressure for Ethiopians is very clear. But for the international community, it's kind of blurred, right? And when we talk about the agenda that have been set by the United Nations Secretary General, that the situation is out of their control, it's to mean that the situation is out of control for themselves, not for Ethiopia or for the Ethiopian government, right?
Yes. That's absolutely right. And it comes from, still again, a biased perspective. We have tried to clarify that Ethiopia is a friend. Ethiopia is an ally to the international community in the West. It needs cooperation. It's a sovereign country that wants to work in partnership and in cooperation with the West. But arm twisting Ethiopia to accept or tolerate an armed insurgency is a double standard, is illegal, and is not useful to the West as well. So we have been trying to clarify this situation from different perspectives. Why do we say that the Western policy on Ethiopia is biased? Because we know that TPLF started this war. It has become incontrovertible, and there is not even an iota of doubt that TPLF started this war, because the leaders of TPLF has came out and stated that they have made a preemptive strike on Ethiopian National Defense, on the Northern Command of Ethiopian National Defense Force. So they have admitted that they have launched this war, they have started this war. But this is the last straw that broke the back of the camel. Before that, TPLF has been doing all sorts of destabilization efforts, including instigating ethnic conflicts, religious conflicts, destabilizing and displacing millions of Ethiopians from Somali region using their former proxy leader, Abiy Ile, and so on. So they have been doing all efforts to destabilize Ethiopia. When that failed, when their proxy war destabilization efforts and instigation of conflicts has failed, then they finally come out and made a preemptive strike, as they put it, on Ethiopia's National Defense Force Northern Command, which triggered the war. So the international community failed to state this, to acknowledge this, that TPLF started the war. That's one point. Why we say it is biased. Their position and their policy is biased because they failed to acknowledge the fact that TPLF started this war, which TPLF admitted publicly that it launched a preemptive strike. The second one is they failed again to denounce TPLF's actions when it continues to invade. The government has taken prudent actions in terms of protecting civilians, has unilaterally declared ceasefire twice to facilitate humanitarian aid, access to humanitarian aid, to protect civilians, and to resolve this conflict and provide chance for peace. But TPLF rejected all these efforts. Before the war even started, the government has made, and the Ethiopian people has made a lot of efforts. If you go back in time, our elders, the women different from different groups of the Ethiopian community, the elders, the religious leaders, the Abagadas, the Ethiopian Christian church leaders, the Ethiopian Muslim leaders have been then in Tigray to plead for peace. Influential people like Haile Gebrselassie has been involved to prevent this war and to bring peace. But it is TPLF. The government has made every effort to prevent this war and to resolve it peacefully. But it's TPLF that rejected it and that launched again the war. So it rejected peace efforts and it also launched a preemptive strike and triggered the war and the conflict. And then with its armed insurgency, it is threatening Ethiopia's territorial integrity. It is threatening, it's affecting millions of Ethiopians, and the government have a constitutional mandate to respond to this and to bring law and order in the country and to protect the lives of civilians. Once the war has started, TPLF has went into Amara and Afar region, and it committed a lot of crimes. The international community again failed to denounce it when it invaded Afar and Amhara regions. And during that time, it has destroyed 2,000 schools in 2 regions. It has destroyed and dismantled 2,300 health facilities. It has committed gross human rights violations, which the international community again failed to condemn and to denounce. And it's in its latest attack that started recently, that triggered the conflict recently, it again stole 570,000 liters of fuel from World Food Program to promote and to enable its war on the Ethiopian people, and then again launched war. So the international community again failed to denounce all these efforts. So that's why we say that the position of the international community is biased for various reasons, including their geopolitical interest. But in all this, their action is also wrong. One, because it doesn't bring peace. It only protracts the conflict. 2, it is not principled because it promotes an armed insurgency and it rewards terrorism and violence, which is a contradiction to the United Nations law, to the United Nations values, the European Union values, and international laws and norms. It failed to denounce TPLF forced recruitment of child soldiers. It fails to denounce TPLF's use of aid to forcibly recruit 2 persons per family for its war to prolong its grip on power and to meet its greed for power and corruption. So it holds Tigrayan people again hostage for its greed for power and corruption. So the international community has failed to look into all these factors, but tries to blame the Ethiopian government or the Ethiopian people But from what we are trying to inform them is that this is wrong, this is bad, because it doesn't take into account this and this and this factors. And again, the Ethiopian government has taken prudent actions. Now it is also trying to provide restoration of services in liberated areas in Tigray region. It is facilitating aid delivery in the liberated areas in Tigray region. So they failed to consider and acknowledge also these factors. So it is a real biased policy, and it will not also help their own interest, the interest of the international community as well. So they think that pressuring the Ethiopian government is in their interest, but we inform them that it is short-sighted policy based on followed premise, and it's wrong. And it is for the European Union and for the Western leaders and for the United States, it is in their own interest to stand with Ethiopian people, to support government efforts to stabilize Ethiopia and promote peace and stability in the region. Galloping the dying horse TPLF would not promote easier peace in the region or would not protect civilians as well. So it is not in their interest. It is not in the interest of Tigrayan people. It is not in the interest of Ethiopian people. It is just a followed policy that they are pursuing.
Why does the international community wanted to side with TPLF, considering all the facts that you have just mentioned, and adding that the Ethiopian government's effort to bring peace and to sit around the table and have a peace talk with the auspices of the African Union as well. And many options are there for discussions, and Ethiopian government has made it official to the international community as well. Why do you think is still the international community choosing to believe the narratives being made by the terrorist TPLF instead of the acknowledged Ethiopian government on power?
There are different reasons. One of the reasons is their own geopolitical interest. For us as well, that is, we believe that the interest of the West and the interest of the Ethiopian people is not mutually exclusive. It can cooperate. There is a win-win possibility to cooperate with Ethiopian people to protect their own interest, as well as respecting the interest and the voice of Ethiopian people. So, but arm twisting is not a solution, and is not the way forward. And trying to it doesn't work. So in Ethiopia, it doesn't work. Ethiopian people are cooperative. We are an ally to the international community. We want to cooperate, but we always resist arm twisting because Ethiopia is a sovereign country. Looking back to our history, we have also never been colonized. That Ethiopians really dare our freedom. We really love our freedom, and we fought for it. But from their interest, one is a geopolitical interest, and the second one is they have a long-established relationship with TPLF while it was in power. If I would mention from 2000 to 2009, the Global Financial Integrity has published a report that around 11.7 USD has flown out from Ethiopia. So this money, this massive money, is being used to pay for lobby firms in order to make biased political decision by world leaders. So the other influence is that through quid pro quo, trying to buy the position of the Western leaders through a lobbying firms, but that is also not in the interest of the US, because we also inform all the West, because we inform them that the horse that you have been galloping is now a dying horse. TPLF does not have political relevance. The Ethiopian people has said no more. The Ethiopian people has said enough is enough. So TPLF will never have political relevance in Ethiopia. So it is better for them also to acknowledge this fact and to stand with Ethiopian people and look for cooperation areas that Ethiopians are always willing and open to work with the international community. So from their own geopolitical interest, and because they have had a long relationship with TPLF, which was again at the expense of Ethiopian people, because TPLF has established this relationship by looting resources from the Ethiopian people, by repressing Ethiopian people for the past 27 years. So this relationship has also been on the wrong basis, was not on the principle, on the basis of principle. So it is because of their geopolitical interest and because of the unhealthy relationship that they had with TPLF for the past 27 years. So there are Western leaders that still want to be in bed with TPLF, who wants to bring back TPLF to power, but this is not possible because the Ethiopian people have said enough is enough. In the past, Western leaders, when TPLF was on power, they were enabling TPLF through their silence. When TPLF committed atrocious human rights abuses, we have been informing them. We have been regularly providing them with information, but they have completely remained silent. They have never denounced the TPLF's actions, its crimes against humanity that it has been committing in Ethiopia for the past 27 years. With their silence, they have been enabling TPLF's repression. Now, when TPLF is fought, and Ethiopian people has fought TPLF and won it and removed it from power, now they want to support TPLF by condemning or pressuring the Ethiopian government. But for sure, this will not also work because we Ethiopians are united against TPLF and we will never accept it. So, be it from their geopolitical interest or from their past unprincipled relationship, it is just a followed policy. That's what we clarified to them as well.
Let's come to the rallies that have been made in the past weekend. Here in Ethiopia, nationwide mass rallies have been made in different parts of the country and in the capital, Addis Ababa as well. And people were out, even the foreigners were out denouncing the pressure of the international community on Ethiopia, also denouncing the acts of the terrorist group as well. And you've also made a rally in Brussels, right? Tell me a little bit about that rally and what were the messages delivered.
Yes, with regards to the rallies in Ethiopia, across Ethiopia, it was that it is a clear and loud voice from Ethiopian people that they are saying that no more TPLF and requesting the Western government to stop pressuring the Ethiopian government and start to take factors into consideration and rectify, as I've said, their policy towards Ethiopia. So if you see the rallies, Ethiopians across the country, from Addis Ababa to Bahar Dar, Gondar, to Jimma, in Afar region, in Somalia region, in Sidama, everywhere across Ethiopia, Ethiopians have said no more TPLF and has requested the international community to stop pressuring Ethiopia, to stop supporting TPLF, to stop supporting armed insurgency in Ethiopia, and start to stand and cooperate with Ethiopian people. So that is a voice, that is a message that has been said from the Ethiopian people in clear terms, in loud voice, with millions out in public saying it clear. The other message that was stated during the demonstrations is that Ethiopian people clearly distinguishes between our enemy, which is TPLF, and our brothers and sisters in Tigray region, our Tigrayan people. So we clearly distinguish the difference between the enemy TPLF and our brothers and sisters, our Tigrayan people. So we show solidarity with them, with Tigrayan people, but the enemy is TPLF, and the Tigrayan people has also to stand with Ethiopian people and uproot TPLF so that they would also have peace and stability, and that TPLF's repression will also, in Tigray region, will also end. Because TPLF is repressing Tigray region, our people in Tigray region, and by repressing Tigrayan people, by holding them hostage, it is also doing destabilization efforts in Afar, Amara region, and throughout Ethiopia, as well as pursuing armed insurgency and terrorist actions from there. So our Tigrayan people also has to liberate themselves. Our Ethiopian people, we stand in solidarity with them in their effort to liberate themselves from TPLF tyranny as well. So the message is clear. One, the message was for our Tigrayan people, that Ethiopian people stands in solidarity with them in their effort to liberate themselves from TPLF. Two, the message is clear that Ethiopian people knows its enemy and no more to TPLF. We have seen TPLF for the past 27 years. We have gone through a lot of, Ethiopian people has gone through a lot of crimes against humanity that has been committed to it by TPLF. So it is a clear statement that says that no more TPLF. And the third one is to the international community. Stop pressuring Ethiopian people, stop pursuing biased approach and policy towards Ethiopia, stand with Ethiopian people, support the government's effort to provide support and services to our people in Tigray region, to those displaced in Afar and Amara region, and support the government's effort to promote stability, rule of law, and peace across the country. So the message is clear. The same message has been echoed by Ethiopians across the world with the No More movement and in our rallies in Brussels. We are also planning to conduct another demonstration across Europe, in different countries across Europe in the coming weeks, to inform the international community that their position is wrong, their policy is biased. It would not bring peace and stability in the Horn of Africa. Rather, it would protract the conflict. It would reward armed insurgency, and it destabilizes the Horn of Africa, which is not in the interest of the international community as well. So the message is clear. That is what we have been saying to the international community.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And before we wind up, Ephraim, what is the message you have that should be delivered to the international community, especially to leave Ethiopia to solve its own problem by its own organization or structure, or the African Union as well? And what is the message for the international community, also the media and institutions that are pressuring Ethiopia not to follow her own agenda?
Okay, for the Western leaders, we are saying that interventionist policy in Ethiopia would not solve the problem. It would worsen it. It would add a fuel to the conflict rather than solving it. It would not bring peace to the country. It would only protract the conflict. So that is our message to the international community. We are saying that, look, a destructive intervention has brought Libya into a failed state, has brought Yemen into a failed state, has brought Syria into a failed state, and a protracted civil war that has lasted for decades. We have seen experiences. The world has enough of these destructive interventions. The aftermath and the consequences of such destructive interventions has displaced hundreds of millions of people, has killed tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of civilians, and has destroyed the countries. So we don't want another Syria, another Libya, another Yemen in East Africa. So a destructive intervention would only exacerbate the problem, would only protract the conflict, but they have to engage in a constructive way with the Ethiopian government, with the Ethiopian people, promote government's efforts to rule of law, peace, stability in the Horn of Africa. The direct solution to this conflict is to disarm an armed insurgent group, TPLF. So their policy has to focus on disarming TPLF. Their policy has to focus on disarming and disabling an armed insurgency in Ethiopia that would destabilize Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa. So that is our message to the international community. Disarm TPLF, stop destructive intervention, cooperate with Ethiopia. Ethiopia is an ally, a friend who wants to cooperate with the international community. It's an open country who wants to cooperate with the international community, cooperate with Ethiopia, cooperate with Ethiopian people, stop destructive intervention, stop enabling armed insurgency. That is the message to the international leaders that we have. To the international medias, we have clearly seen that their reporting is unethical, their reporting is biased, their reporting is not objective, because when TPLF committed gross human rights abuses they have never reported it. When TPLF invaded Amara and Afar regions, they never reported it. What I have been mentioning. So the international media has failed to report, to be objective in the conflict, on the situation in Ethiopia and vis-a-vis the conflict in northern Ethiopia as well. So to them also, what we are saying is that respect the ethics of journalism, stand with the facts, report on the basis of the facts, listen to the voice and the will of Ethiopian people. Look, we have been just talking about the demonstration across Ethiopia. Most of the Western leaders, if not all, have not reported about it at all because they don't want to see these factors. So had it been standing for the factors, they would have reported what the Ethiopian people across the country are saying, what the Ethiopian diaspora globally are saying. No more TPLF. They have not reported this. They have not covering it up. So it's also a biased approach from the media side, not only promoting disinformation and misinformation campaign, but also ignoring facts and not covering what the voice of the Ethiopian people are calling for. So to the international media as well, we request them to be ethical and to stand reporting the facts on the ground and report the voice of the Ethiopian people as well.
Ephraim Zaudu, the Ethiopian Defense Task Force in Europe coordinator. Also, he is the coordinator of the diaspora community in Europe and Brussels. Thank you for your time. I hope we will join with another interview.
Thank you very much. I also hope, Masara, that this conflict, this situation will be resolved soon, that we would move on to other agenda because Ethiopia is working on development, has a lot of major projects that it wants to ensure its own development. That is where we want to focus at. But our enemies want us to stuck in this conflict and want to protract this conflict. Ethiopian people are determined to win it. We will win it. And the message to the Ethiopian people is that let us stand united. And it's in our unity that we will overcome these challenges and we will ensure stability, peace, and development in our country. Thank you very much for giving me the chance, Mr.
Thank you again, Ephraim. Well, viewers, you've been watching Addis Media Network, Addis TV's English program. We've discussed with Ephraim. He's the coordinator at the Ethiopian Defense Task Force in Europe. And we've discussed a lot of issues